The story of the burning of the BOYD is a haunting tale of violence and revenge. Set on the high seas of the Pacific Ocean, a boat named the BOYD set sail from the busy port of Sydney, destined for the golden shores of New Zealand. On board was a mix of sailors, convicts, wealthy merchants, and returning Maori men. Most were hoping to make a fortune in the lucrative whaling trade. They were all at the mercy of a hard taskmaster, Captain John Thompson. He would work them with an iron fist, and no one dared disobey him. Unknown to them, this would be their last voyage, and many would meet a very painful death set amongst the blue waters and dense bush of New Zealand. The death of the crew and passengers would set in motion one of the bloodiest battles in New Zealand history. The killings ignited tensions that were already simmering across the nation. How did this boat voyage end in such a tragedy? It all starts and ends with a young Maori man named Tiara, the son of a Whangaroa chief, December of 1809. After unloading stock in Sydney, the BOYD was bound for New Zealand. For the final part of a long and arduous voyage, the BOYD had already been at sea for several months and was nearing the end. As said earlier, the captain was stern and uncompromising, had little patience for his crew's complaints, and often used harsh disciplinary measures to keep them in line. It was this treatment that would ultimately lead to the ship's downfall. Now, sometime into the voyage, the captain and the young Maori Tiara have an altercation. Tiara was returning home to New Zealand. He did not get on with the captain. Maybe he felt working on the ship was beneath him. Whatever happened, the result was Tiara was treated poorly. After not performing the correct work, Captain Thompson had him punished. First up, he was tied down and given no food or water. When Tiara's attitude did not change after this punishment, it was said Captain Thompson got out the whip, which was the cat of nine tails. This is not your average whip. The cat is made up of 9 knotted thongs of cotton cord, about 75 centimeters, roughly 2.5 feet long, designed to lacerate the skin and cause intense pain. In the British Navy, the boatswain's mate would comb out the tails of the cat due to the thinner parts of the cat sticking to each other. He would then swing it over his head, make a step forward, bending his body to give more force to the blow, deliver the stroke at the full sweep of his arm. After the flogging was completed, the sailor's lacerated back was frequently rinsed with brine or seawater, which was thought to serve as a crude antiseptic. Although the purpose was to control infection, it caused the sailor to endure additional pain, and gave rise to the expression rubbing salt into his wounds, which came to mean vindictively or gratuitously increasing a punishment or injury already imposed. The captain had in that moment sealed his fate. He whipped Tiara in front of the whole crew. This was a grave insult to his honor, and this action would not go unpunished. Tiara laid low until his wounds had healed. He approached the captain, and some say he changed his ways and began to work well on the ship, even helping out when he could. Tiara would gain the trust and excitement of the captain as he told him of wondrous kauri trees growing in New Zealand that would be worth a fortune. The captain began to trust him, and as they were nearing the shores of New Zealand, he would ask Tiara for guidance on where they should land. The first step towards retribution had been made. Tiara guided the ship till and at the Whangaroa harbour. What the captain did not know was this harbour was the very one Tiara had grown up in. He had led them right to his father's tribe. The BOYD was only the 3rd ever European ship into the harbour. The last one had been a year earlier, and it did not go well. The crew of the Commerce had actually caused an outbreak of disease that killed a number of Maori. The tribe believed that a curse had been placed on them, so as the BOYD arrived it would have been met with fear and apprehension. As the BOYD lay at anchor in the harbour, Tiara helped organize a search party to go ashore, including Captain Thompson. It was here that he went ahead and explained to his father what had happened aboard the ship, how he was demeaned, tortured, and his mana was offended. The chief sought vengeance for his son. The search party met up with Tiara again, and he led them right into a trap. Every single person was clubbed to death with a traditional war weapon. The horror did not stop there. The Maori warriors then picked up the bodies and carried them back to the village. This is where they were eaten. Turns out stories of cannibalism were true in the Pacific. At dusk it was now when some of the Maori disguised themselves as the returning shore party, while other warriors waited in canoes for the signal to attack. The assault was swift and decisive. Most of the Europeans were killed that evening. Some managed to hide in the rigging or tucked away behind barrels in the hold. However, if you survived the killings, you still did not really have much time left. The next morning, a chief from the Bay of Islands entered the harbor. His name was Te Pahi, a prominent chief who actively supported trade with Europeans and had previously traveled to Australia in 1805. Te Pahi was genuinely shocked by what he found. He stepped in, and he tried to rescue the terrified Europeans still alive. Many were still clinging to the ship's rigging. It was at this time Te Ara's tribe noticed the canoes, and they wanted Te Pahi gone, as there was plenty of gunpowder and other supplies on the ship that they wanted. The worst part in this sad story: later on Te Pahi is blamed for the massacre of the body and induce horrific retribution by the Europeans. The remaining crew and passengers of the BOYD were taken captive by the Maori. One male was Tom Davis, who was the ship's cabin boy, and Morley and her baby, and 2-year-old Betsy Broughton, who was taken by a local chief. Tom was spared because he had tended to Te Ara after his flogging and had smuggled food to him. The second mate was put to work making fish hooks from barrel hoops, but when he proved incompetent at this task, he was killed and eaten. The BOYD was then towed up the harbor towards Te Ara's village. It was here they allowed the ship to be grounded on the mud flats near Motuai, Rid Island. The ship was then emptied of all muskets and gunpowder. However, during the removal of goods, a musket flint ignited the gunpowder on board. This of course caused a huge explosion that killed a number of Maori, including Te Ara's father. The fire soon spread to casks of inflammable whale oil, and the now sad final voyage of the BOYD had come to an end. The story of the BOYD spread like wildfire around the North Island, and it was not long until it had reached the Bay of Islands, which was the central port at this time. Shortly after that, the vessel called City of Edinburgh and other vessels arrived to investigate. In one stroke of fortune, a Maori chief from the Bay of Islands, who had come down with the European force, was able to negotiate the return of Anne Morley, her baby, and Tom Davis, and eventually Betsy Broughton as well. The tribe were questioned over what happened, and they simply called the captain a bad man, that he had done bad things. The whalers who were there went on to assume that Te Pahi had instigated the massacre. Even when he told them of his innocence, they did not listen, and sadly his village, Te Puna, was destroyed by the European sailors, with terrible losses for him and his tribe. This act of revenge then resulted in civil war breaking out in the region, which in turn spread across the nation for many years. The story of the burning of the BOYD is a cautionary tale about the dangers of cultural misunderstandings and the importance of respecting the customs and traditions of others. The crew and passengers of the BOYD were lured to New Zealand by the promise of riches and adventure, but their journey ended in tragedy and sorrow.